Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are tonight's entertainment.
This next prophecy I'm going to quote will also have words added by me that are clearly implied in the text. I'm going to add these to give the correct explanation of the text, and Dr. Brown can challenge me on any point. The Lord your God will raise up for you, the nation of Israel, a prophet like me, Moses, from among your brother nations. You must listen to him. This is what you asked of the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly, when you said, let me not hear the voice of the Lord our God or see this great fire anymore, so that I will not die. How do we know that this prophet like Moses will be raised amongst a nation other than Israel? Due to the fact that the pronouns refer to the nation of Israel as a singular person. It is common sense that a brother of a person referred to in a pronoun cannot be the one who the pronoun refers to. For example, the brother of Bob cannot be Bob himself. The brother of Israel cannot be Israel himself. Israel as a nation is personified as a singular person in this prophecy, with the pronouns you being singular, and phrases such as in verse 16, where it says, let me not again hear the voice of the Lord my God, nor see this great fire anymore, or I will die. Dr. Brown can show us another example in the Torah where the singular pronoun is used for the entire nation, yet brothers also refers to the same nation, namely Israel. Apart from one place, of which I will deal with in the rebuttals if Dr. Brown appeals to it, there is no such other case. This proves that this prophet like Moses will appear from a brother nation of the Israelites, such as the Ishmaelites, a fulfillment of God's spiritual promise to make Ishmael a great nation. Now the fact that God says in this prophecy that this prophet to be raised up will be like Moses is proof that this is a singular prophet who will be unique in the sense of being a mediator of a covenant and a lawgiver like Moses. This proves that the interpretation Dr. Brown believes of this being a line of prophets is false, and I challenge him to give us proof that this is about a line of prophets.
As for the text that I was asked to challenge from Deuteronomy 18, of course, what you just had is a perfect example of adding to the Bible. Not only adding to the Bible, but turning the words upside down.
Now, prepare for the shock.
Not only adding to the Bible, but turning the words upside down, upside down, upside down.
I said, prepare for the shock.
And understand how missionaries misread the Bible, how they manipulate the Bible, and how they use the Bible inappropriately to try to prove what they are selling. They transform these passages which are talking about other topics, and they insist, no, those are messianic prophecies that Jesus fulfilled.
Turning the words upside down. Turning the words upside down.
That's what you call double standards?
Christian gets puzzled.
So Deuteronomy 18:15, Navi mikir b'cha me'achacha kamoni yakim lecha Adonai lehecha elav tishma'un. It's quite explicit. He will be mikir b'cha from your own midst, which occurs in the Torah 11 times, and every single time in the Torah, without exception, explicitly means from the midst of your people Israel, not from your brother nations, as you heard. That is not only adding to the Bible, it is twisting it and turning it upside down. Alarm! From the midst of your people Israel, from the midst of your people Israel. From the midst of your people Israel. That is not only adding to the Bible, it is twisting it and turning it upside down. That is not only adding to the Bible, it is twisting it and turning it upside down.
And here we go.
Twisting it and turning it upside down. 10 times in Deuteronomy alone, it says, Mikir b'cha, drive out the evil from your midst. It always means, without exception, 100 times out of 100 in the Torah, from the midst of your people Israel. Was Muhammad an Israelite? No. Case closed. We don't even need to discuss it any further.
Now, Deuteronomy chapter 18, Dr. Brand said I added to the Bible, but he didn't specifically say where. Every single word I said when I broke down the text is implied in the text. So Dr. Brand should give me a specific example. Dr. Brand says that Deuteronomy says, Mikerev ka, which means within you, is used 11 times in the book of Deuteronomy. So that means he must be an Israelite. What Dr. Brand is doing is he's appealing to the Masoretic text of Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse number 15, that has been expanded on to have the phrase from within you of your brothers. The Septuagint lacks those words. The Qumran scrolls lack them words. Acts chapter 3, when it quotes the same word, lacks them words. Acts chapter 7, when it quotes them words, lacks them words. And even in the Masoretic text, 3 verses later, when the actual the words of God are spoken, the words from within you are not mentioned. Moreover, scholars say that was expanded in the text to make it look like it must be an Israelite by blood, and I've got the quotes here anyway.
How come? How come? What games are you people playing?
Moreover, Dr. Bryan himself doesn't know, with all due respect, that there's a difference in the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse number 15, Israel is personified as a single person. So when it's speaking about the brother of the single person Israel, it's speaking about another nation. All the texts you cited, which literally say within you, are speaking about brothers within the tribe of Israel. And I'll give you an example from Deuteronomy chapter 18 itself. Levi is spoken of twice in the same chapter, I think in verse number 2 and verse number 6. In verse number 2 is speaking about the brothers of the tribe of Levi, meaning the other Israelite tribes, whereas in verse 6 is speaking about the brothers within the tribe of Levi.
As for Deuteronomy 18:15, we were told that the Dead Sea Scrolls of Deuteronomy 18:15 don't say Makir B'cha. That's because we don't have any Dead Sea Scroll for Deuteronomy 18:15. Please give me the manuscript number, the exact citation of Deuteronomy 18:15 in the Dead Sea Scrolls. According to my Dead Sea Scroll lexicon, it's not found there. If you find something contrary, please bring it to our attention. But do you want the list of where Mikir B'cha from your own midst, where every single time it means from Israel? Deuteronomy 4:3, Deuteronomy 13:6, Deuteronomy 13:14, Deuteronomy 17:7, 19:19, 21:9, 21:21, 22:21, 22:24, and 24:7. Look them up, you'll see without fail. And it's fascinating, we're told that the Masoretic text added these words in to say he had to be an Israelite, only to be told that they don't mean he had to be an Israelite. You can't have it both ways. We're told that the Masoretic text added these words in to say he had to be an Israelite, only to be told that they don't mean he had to be an Israelite.
Doesn't make sense.
As far as Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 15, you're right about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I meant to say Samaritan. So it's the Masoretic text in verse number 18 that rules it out, the Septuagint that rules it out, the Samaritan that rules it out. Acts chapter 3 and Acts chapter 7 rule out those key words. And if you ask me, I'll quote some scholars who mention this is an expansion to the text.
I like this job. I like it.
Zakir has fought strenuously to remove the words Mikir B'cha from the Masoretic text of Deuteronomy 18. And I pointed out that 11 times in the Torah quoted that every single time it means from the midst of within Israel. First he tried to show it didn't mean that. Now he tries to show that the words aren't even there and that they were added. Why? To show that it had to be an Israelite. Isn't that fascinating?
Doesn't make sense.
As to the technical term, me'achecha, when you have it together, mikarev achecha, from the midst of your brothers, or mikir b'cha, me'achecha, from your own midst, from your brothers, it's only one meaning. Only one meaning in the Torah. Every single time, without exception, from the midst of your own people, Israel.
Acts chapter 3 quotes this verse, and it's the same as the Samaritan and Septuagint, from amongst your brothers, not from within you of your brothers, which is what the Masoretic text says, but from amongst your brothers. And Acts chapter 7, verse 37, the same thing. So Masoretic text verse number 18 exposes this falsehood. Septuagint exposes this falsehood. Samaritan exposes it. Acts chapter 3 exposes it. Acts chapter 7 exposes it. But did you notice in the debate, Dr. Brand wouldn't get away from the Masoretic text, even though when rabbis use the Masoretic text against the Christians to say that the New Testament contradicts what the Masoretic text says, all over his book, Dr. Brand tries to show that the Masoretic text is not the authoritative text, and he appeals to other texts, like he'll appeal to variants and the Talmud quoted the Old Testament, and he'll appeal to the Dead Sea Scrolls, he'll appeal to the Targums. But all of a sudden in this debate, he wanted to cling to the Masoretic text. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Without telling us why
selective.
all these other versions should be rejected.
Is Muhammad prophesied in the Bible? Absolutely, categorically, no, not a chance. But Jesus wonderfully is. But Jesus wonderfully is.
There's an old joke, a Jewish one. Why did God invent Mormons? So Christians will know exactly how Jews feel. There's an old joke.
But Jesus wonderfully is.
And I thought my jokes were bad. All right, so listen, why don't you give me a call when you want to start taking things a little more seriously? Here's my card.
I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brothers. I will put my words in his mouth, and he will tell them everything I command him.
He focused on the Bible, doesn't prophesy about Muhammad. And the answer is absolutely, categorically, no. Not even a possibility, unless you want to look for prophecies about false prophets. And there are general warnings about those in the Bible.
This prophet like Moses will appear from a brother nation of the Israelites, such as the Ishmaelites, a fulfillment of God's spiritual promise to make Ishmael a great nation.
And nowhere does it say, by the way, that an Ishmaelite is your brother. It just doesn't say that. It mentions an Edomite, doesn't mention an Ishmaelite. Isn't that interesting?
What Dr. Brand writes in, where's Ishmael called the brethren of Israel? Genesis chapter 16, verse number 12, he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren. Ellicott's commentary, he will dwell in the presence of all his brethren. That is, he shall maintain his independence, and his descendants shall continue to exist as a free race in the presence of the other Abrahamic nations. John Gills goes on to say, he will dwell in the presence of his brethren, the sons of Abraham, by Keturah, Midianites, Edomites, Isaac, and the Israelites. Thank you very much. Challenge dealt with.
And nowhere does it say, by the way, that an Ishmaelite is your brother.
From a brother nation of the Israelites, such as the Ishmaelites, a fulfillment of God's spiritual promise to make Ishmael a great nation.
I will make him a great nation was fulfilled when the Muslim empire became a reality from the 7th to the 12th centuries.
And nowhere does it say, by the way, that an Ishmaelite is your brother. Isn't that interesting?
Genesis chapter 16, verse number 12, and he shall dwell in the presence of his brethren.
These are passages that are not talking about the Messiah, but because the Christian is so invested in trying to prove what they already believe, they transform these passages which are talking about other topics, and they insist, no, those are messianic prophecies that Jesus fulfilled.
Isn't that interesting?
This is what happens. Allah describes it to us in the Holy Quran. بَلْ نَقْذِفُ بِالْحَقِّ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ. When truth is hurled against falsehood, it knocks out its brains.
If anyone does not listen to my words that the prophet speaks in my name, I myself will call him to account.
قال رب إني دعوت قومي ليلا ونهارا
וחולו מחמדים, וחולו מחמדים, וחולו מחמדים.
It's showtime. Song of Songs, which according to almost a consensus of Jewish scholars, refers to the relationship between God and Israel and the church and Christ according to Christendom.
The Song of Solomon, listen, I mean no disrespect, but the argument tonight is not even a debate. I'm only doing it out of respect for Muslims who believe it, but it's not even a debate, to be candid.
And I thought my jokes were bad.
And as far as Song of Songs, Dr. Brand tries to play it down, but the Jews had a consensus, the Christians had a consensus that this is speaking about the allegorical meaning, the history of Israel and the Messiah, and so are the Christians. So all Dr. Brand is doing is mocking all these scholars. Why? Because he knows the minute he admits it's a prophecy, the Muslims will have a field day.
Let's take another moment on Song of Solomon. It's not a prophecy. Jews traditionally understand it as a love song about God and Israel, looking back at Israel's history. Okay? Christians read it as speaking about Jesus and the church, but when traditional Jews read it, they're looking at it as history. Read the Targum, the expansive Targum, which is a love song of God and Israel. So even if you want to try to apply it there, it goes back. It goes back, not forward.
Understand what just happened here. He's making the claim that Jews read this as something that happened in the past. It's history. It is not prophetic. It cannot speak about the future. And in the same breath, he says it refers to Jesus and the church, which was not existent at the time of the Song of Solomon. If you play the clip,
Christians read it as speaking about Jesus and the church, but when traditional Jews read it, they're looking at it as history.
Say that one more time.
Christians read it as speaking about Jesus and the church, but when traditional Jews read it, they're looking at it as history.
One more time.
If you want to try to apply it there, it goes back. It goes back, not forward.
One more time.
As speaking about Jesus and the church, Jesus and the church, it goes back, not forward. Jesus and the church, it goes back, not forward.
Okay.
Should we play Dr. Brown one more time where he says it's not a prophecy, or shall I just read this?
Yes.
It's not a prophecy. It's not a prophecy. It's not a prophecy.
Did you hear that? This is what Dr. Brown writes in volume 3, page 154. But you might say, so he's speaking about the Jews, not all of these references can be called messianic prophecies. Some of them are hardly messianic, while others are hardly prophecies. Now here's where it gets juicy. Actually, the New Testament authors, in keeping with the sentiments later expressed in the rabbinic writings, saw the whole of the Hebrew scriptures as pointing to King Messiah. Did you hear that? So basically, agreeing with the rabbis, the New Testament understood all of the Old Testament as pointing to Jesus, King Messiah. So is the Song of Songs part of the Old Testament or not?
It's not a prophecy.
Yeah, it is, according to.
Yes. So he's admitting here that the New Testament, forget the church fathers for now, the New Testament understood all of the Old Testament as pointing towards Jesus, which means what? The church fathers were correct in applying Song of Songs to Jesus as well. So why is he telling us now it's not a prophecy, where he says the opposite to the Jews?
It's not a prophecy.
That's what you call double standards.
How come? How come? What games are you people playing?
حكام ممتكين بخلوم محمد ديم بخلوم محمد ديم بخلوم محمد ديم.
How many errors could I have exposed in one debate? That's the question.
Fascinating point.
So is that his own testimony?
This is his own book, volume 3, page 154.
So he's debating himself.
Basically, and the thing is, every slide I'm showing now, this is not something that, in case Christians say, oh, Zakir had to up his game after the debate. I had all of this with me at the debate, but because it was so fast paced, and that, as I mentioned in the debate, I'm not even going to touch my paper, so I worked off memory, but I had all of this ready. But this is the Art Scroll Tanakh series for Song of Songs. Now, Dr. Brand said that this is Jews only take it as speaking about the history, not about the future. And remember, I mentioned that Song of Songs chapter 5 speaks about the exile.
Song of Solomon verse 7 confirms this during a period of exile. Verse 11 alludes to Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel 7, confirming he comes during the Roman exile and describes him, interestingly, as the purest Arabian gold.
Now, this is what they write in the introductory remarks, adapted from Rashi's introduction. So they adapted this introduction from Rashi, who's one of the biggest commentators in Judaism. They wrote, Solomon foresaw through the Holy Spirit that Israel is destined to suffer a series of exiles and will lament. A series of exiles. Not only was the Babylonian exile after the time of Solomon, but the Roman exile definitely was. And they're claiming, based on Rashi, that Solomon in the Song of Songs foresaw both exiles, which means they don't understand they are just speaking about the past. They understand Song of Songs are speaking about the past, the present, and the Messianic age.
But when traditional Jews read it, they're looking at it as history.
Did you hear that? How many errors could I have exposed in one debate? That's the question. Just one more quote from here. He also mentioned the Targum, which kind of surprised me because this is Dr. Brand's specialty. He's been debating with Jews since the 70s. So I didn't expect these type of errors from him.
Read the Targum, the expansive Targum, which is a love song of God and Israel.
But he said that the Targum as well understood it as the past. But this is what they write here, and I didn't even need this commentary for the Targum point because I mentioned in my debate with Dr. White 11 years back that the Targum understood it as messianic.
I knew you were going to find my name in the text, but can you find a passage that's got my description and mentions Birmingham too, Dr. White? And can you also show me the same passage where Jews were interpreting this as a prophet to come? I've got quotes that show that Jews seen this as a future person.
So this is what they write here. The Targum, this is based on chapter 8, verse number 2, where it says, I would lead you. They write the Targum interprets these words as being addressed to the Messiah in reference to the time of redemption. So the phrase in Song of Songs chapter 8, verse number 2, I will lead you, they go on to say it means, I would lead you, O King Messiah, and bring you up to my temple, and you will teach me to fear the Lord and to walk in his way. How many errors could I have exposed in one debate? That's the question. This is what Bruce Metzger writes. Its inclusion in the Jewish and Christian canon is due to its acceptance as an allegory of God's love for Israel or Christ's love for the church. Bruce Metzger is saying that's the reason it was accepted in the canon. If they understood it as literal, the literal love story that the Christians of today are saying.
This is Solomon's wife extolling the handsome king Solomon that she's going to be marrying. It's describing Solomon.
If they understood it as literal, the literal love story that the Christians of today are saying, they wouldn't have accepted it in the canon. Did you hear that?
It's not a prophecy.
How many errors could I have exposed in one debate? That's the question. And as Ellen F. Davis, she's mentioned, all of the ancient Jewish evidence we possess points to the interpretation of the Song of Songs as an allegory of the bridegroom God and his covenant with Israel. There is no competing view that has lived to see the light of day. So literally, they're throwing Dr. Brown's own quote under the bus about the New Testament understanding, the entire Hebrew Bible that's speaking about the Messiah. They're throwing all the rabbis, they're throwing the church fathers, everything. Why? Because the Muslims have exposed them on this. Did you hear that? How many errors could I have exposed in one debate? That's the question.
And look, I don't mean insult in saying this, but the arguments are as weak as saying, I have a Christian friend named Mo, and he used to be very fat, but now he's slim. And you respond saying, he's not a Christian at all. No, he's Mo, who is now slim, so Mo slim equals Muslim. It's that outlandish.
But then you want to joke with us Muslims, with all due respect. I think the joke's the other way around. I think the joke's the other way around. I think the joke's the other way around.
The Christians read it as speaking about Jesus and the church. It's not a prophecy. It's not a prophecy.
The minute he admits it's a prophecy, the Muslims will have a field day.
This is what happens. Allah describes it to us in the Holy Quran. سَبَلْ نَقْذِفُ بِالْحَقِّ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ. When truth is hurled against falsehood, it knocks out its brains. It knocks out its brains. It knocks out its brains.
Cowabunga.
I urge you to have the courage to follow the truth wherever it leads, because the stakes are very high.
وأوحينا إلى موسى أن ألق عصاك فإذا هي تلقف ما يأفكون فوقع الحق وبطل ما كانوا يعملون فغلبوا هنالك وانقلبوا صاغرين وألقي السحرة ساجدين قالوا آمنا برب العالمين رب موسى وهارون
حكومة تكيم وخلو محمد ديم وخلو محمد ديم وخلو محمد ديم.
But the argument tonight is not even a debate. I'm only doing it out of respect for Muslims who believe it, but it's not even a debate, to be candid. And look, I don't mean insult in saying this, but the arguments are as weak as saying, I have a Christian friend named Mo, and he used to be very fat, but now he's slim. And you respond saying, he's not a Christian at all. No, he's Mo, who is now slim, so Mo slim equals Muslim. It's that outlandish. Maybe it's a prophecy about Confucius. I mean, it's using this same logic to find Muhammad in 42, because Kedar is mentioned. You might as well make the prophet into Confucius. But we don't even have to be silly with arguments like this. So when we talk about this, actually, I think the Bible prophesies about me more than Muhammad. After all, my name occurs 15 times. Michael, Michael, the archangel. I mean, Muhammad is no more prophesied in the Bible than Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, is prophesied in the Quran. And in saying this, I mean no insult to my Muslim friends who are here, who are watching this. But if your faith requires you to believe that the Bible prophesies about Muhammad, then you need to question your faith.
Now, prepare for the shock. I said, prepare for the shock.
What moves me, and I see tears in many of your eyes, is not that someone, a Jew, who hears a single chapter of Isaiah is suddenly drawn to a belief in Jesus. But for me, it's the story of a nation that held on to their belief in the God of Israel, who fought against the Romans, who suffered under the Nazis, who were kicked out and expelled from Spain, who held on tenaciously to the faith of Abraham and the faith of Moses, that is clear that no man is God, and that every human being must lead a godly life, and to be separated from that religion through a single reading of a passage without asking a single question? My God, you mean it's that easy? You mean my people didn't give this up Even when they were tortured and killed for it, and a single reading of a passage, he was separated from the faith of his forefathers, from the faith of Abraham. When you ask me about Isaiah 53, and I just wrote Kosher Jesus because the Jewish community should reclaim a patriot who died for his people against the tyranny and the oppression of Rome. But when I read Isaiah 53, it can't be Jesus, for the reason you just said. I'm surprised your father didn't catch it, Sid. Like a lamb to the slaughter, he opened not his mouth. Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's in Matthew and in Mark.
My God. My God. Why have you forsaken me?
He also says it is done. He opens his mouth. It also says, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days. Jesus had no seed, he had no children, and he died at about 33. I think this is speaking about Abraham Lincoln. I think it's speaking about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was the greatest American of the 20th century. Is there anyone who suffered the iniquity of the American people more than him? And he did see his seed. He suffered the racism of Americans, and a white racist who put a bullet through his neck. Why isn't it Martin Luther? The point is, many people have suffered. But I want to tell you one thing. You can have all the most moving stories on earth about someone who embraces Jesus as a Jew through some epiphany and through some miraculous intervention. But you will never, ever hear that about me.
Maybe it's a prophecy about Confucius.
I think this is speaking about Abraham Lincoln.
That Muhammad is no more prophesied in the Bible than Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, is prophesied in the Quran.
But when I read Isaiah 53, it can't be Jesus. I think it's speaking about Martin Luther King.
Maybe it's a prophecy about Confucius.
I think this is speaking about Abraham Lincoln.
I can't believe I'm meeting Sylvester Stallone. Hey, yo, Rambo! You rang? Hey, here. I can't believe this. What are you doing here? Well, you know, I figured after 14 years we should meet, and I just wanted to meet you, and I didn't have a lot to do in Philly, so here I am.
But when I read Isaiah 53, it can't be Jesus.
Maybe it's a prophecy about Confucius.
I think this is speaking about Abraham Lincoln.
Swing with brace and sheep. Hold the pennant line. What are you doing? What are you doing? No, what are you doing? What are you doing?
حكو منتقيم وخلو محمد ديم وخلو محمد ديم وخلو محمد ديم.
Did he have a primary mission to Israel? Read Surah 2, ayah number 40. He
أنتم تعلمون